G'day viewers, today we're joined by Mel Yuan. She's going to be a state candidate at the upcoming the upcoming state election, running for Brunswick, yeah? Okay, perfect. And then, we'll hear about, Mel's exciting new plans that are probably better than Labor's. That's pretty easy, isn't it? We'll hear how Mel, you're allowed to talk.
I've got plenty to say, Owen. I'm sure we'll get to it all.
Okay, sure. Anyway, okay, let's go. G'day viewers, welcome to My First Party, the podcast where we meet people at the grassroots of politics. My name's Owen Miller, I'm a candidate for the Fusion Party. With us as usual, the enemy of anecdotes, Mr. Peter Kargiotis.
All yours, mate.
You hate it every time,
Yeah, because you actually try to make points with anecdotes, and you kind of, what was the guy yesterday talking about, like, reductive / what was the other term he used?
That's for regressive.
Yeah.
Oh no, but he meant regressive.
No, and then I used you twice yesterday as examples of what you're actually doing with your anecdotes.
Okay, fair enough.
We'll rewatch it.
Mel, do you like anecdotes?
I do like a good anecdote, but thanks so much for having me, and I'll try and minimise the anecdotes.
So, by the way, some of our viewers aren't in Victoria. Some of them are in the US, actually. So can you fill us in? So, why are you running for Brunswick? Where does Brunswick fit into the world? Should these Americans be moving to Brunswick, by the way? What would they love?
Depends who you ask. I should say Owen and I met because I have run as a local council candidate for the last 3 candidate elections. I first ran when I was literally a mum pushing the pram around, taking my kids to the playgrounds and going, wow, this playground's terrible. And then going across to Moonee Valley and going, this playground's great. And
Wait, this story is very similar to Oscar.
Really?
Yeah.
So that's sort of what got me involved.
But he's pushes bins, not prams.
Wait, did Oscar hear your story and remember Oscar was saying he was pushing his kid on the swing?
Yes, the swing.
And then that's why
right.
he got into council.
You do listen.
Who made this story first?
Well, actually, as part of that, I did actually meet with Oscar when he was the mayor, talking about playground strategies, and also Sam Ratnam. So I emailed a couple of councils at that time, and it was Oscar and Sam who got back to me. And, a lot of things were happening in the playground movement as it were at that time, and then a playground strategy came out of that kind of era. So that's how it got started. So I've run the last 3 times, and then this time I thought, well, state elections coming up. 2025 was not really a banner year. 2025 started with Trump 2.0 and ended with Bondi. And so, you go away for Christmas, have summer, and I thought, you know what, state elections coming, this time I'm going to run for state. But very much my sort of attitude and philosophy and how I'm doing things is the same as how I've done it running for council, which is very, very low fi, very self-help. So, do the same again.
Why do those events of 2025 impact you running or not running?
I think that looking around the world, there's a trigger for everything. So if it's Oscar pushing the swing, or if it's me pushing my kids around the pram, those things on a world event, they make a difference. They have an impact on you. They make you think about what's going on in the world and make you think about, what you're doing. What should you be doing?
Okay.
You're saying you can see I can make the world a better place. You're starting at the playground, but moving on to, I guess, Parliament.
Or you let the guests tell them.
Fewer anecdotes, yeah. So I think whenever I've run for council, I actually say to people, people are like, oh, wow, you're running for council. That's interesting, quote unquote, really, you're a loony. I'm like, well, yes, but, everyone should be the same kind of loony. More people should do this, which is to put themselves forward as candidates, because I think we'd actually be better off. Because I think it's part of the political process. A lot of people, they don't want to. They don't want to stick their head above the parapet. They don't want to attract that kind of attention and criticism. You do have to be a special sort of narcissist to put yourself forward to run for office. And, nobody wants to sort of do that. But I think we'd be better off if more people did.
True, probably not a clinical diagnosis, but going back again, why would those events of, Trump and the Bondi issue affect you running or not running? Because
to me, they're quite emblematic and symptomatic of what I think is happening in public policy and in politics. So I think, you elect Trump once and you can write it off as maybe an accident. You elect Trump for a second time and, you've got to listen a little bit harder. What's actually going on here? And then I think a lot of and almost now we're 18 months in. So a lot of the shock and awe has subsided a bit. You know, this is just a world we live in now. We're used to it. It was normalised. But I think a lot of the things that I could see happening in Trump 2.0 were really concerning from a rule of law, you know, independence of various parts, and and not that any of those institutions are without fault and without flaw, and they're human constructs and they can change. But so much I felt about democracy was very much under peril. And I think the Bondi thing for me landed hugely just because I think about, you know, as a person now, you know, I'm a middle-aged person, right? You know, born in Australia, I've lived in Australia, you know, how I think about our national identity, how I think about how our country works was completely challenged by that.
How did the Bondi incident challenge your?
I think the fact that it was such a public act of violence in a way that wasn't about just, it was so politically motivated. It was so public. It was so inspired by a political agenda and a political outcome. And then obviously in the time immediately following, learning about what was known about the family, learning about what was happening on the beach with the community, learning about what was happening in the intelligence apparatus, sort of unpacking all that, that to me was a shock. It was a real shock that that's what, you know, was happening in our culture and in our society. And the outcome was what had happened with Bondi. You know, people died in public.
I'm not conflating the Bondi issue with what I'm about to say.
Sure.
But what about when our nation state goes and commits other atrocities overseas for political reasons?
It inspires it. Yeah.
No, I'm not, again, I don't want to conflate it with that issue or any other issue. I'm just saying, as a nation, that is our policy to go and do these acts for, I guess, political reasons.
Yeah.
Did those matters not, I guess, resonate as strongly as just something happening here in Australia?
Did you have a particular example in mind?
Any. There is no, Australia has not gone overseas for any other reason than political.
Oh, absolutely. Wars are political. 100%. Wars are political. When you have an armed service and they are deployed, you know, they're engaging in political acts. Yeah, I've got no...
Yeah, and I use the word atrocities, like, openly. So, you know, don't stand back from them. So... And again, just maybe even to relate it to that, the Bondi issue, in relation to materiality, what we commit overseas is far bigger in material sense than what happened here. So...
And what metric do you use for that? What do you think is important?
In every metric.
Yeah. Also, like 30 people or so died at Bondi around that figure. But then, yeah, I guess, you know, compared to like, you know, is Australia a good global citizen? How much suffering around the world do we enable?
Yeah.
You see, you know, Afghanistan and Iraq being ripped apart. Look at Iran now. You know, how many people with, you know, Australia's complicity with, you know, the US and its being global police. You know, you look at the Strait of Hormuz now, how many people are going to suffer from famine because the fertilizer can't come out through the Strait of Hormuz? Seriously, I'm predicting that, you know, millions of people are going to die in famine in the next few months. Nobody else seems quite as worried about it.
Yeah, the consequences are significant. So I think it comes down to, you know, everyone's got their own personal slice of the world. I started my personal story talking about playgrounds. And so, you know, I'm a local person. I operate in grassroots in my community, literally, actually grassroots, and that's another way that Owen and I met, but at a very, very local level. And so for me, running in state politics is more of an extension of what I see happening really locally in the community. International events have put focus on, because I feel like, do we have confidence that our own cultures and society and institutions and services, and are those things healthy? And so really, I suppose my parallel is saying, well, I feel like there's unhealthiness that goes on in a lot of communities, and I wanted my community to be more healthy. So while those national and international things affected me, it's more because I'm really concerned about, you know, what's happening literally in, you know, my street. So I do have a small focus in that sense.
And I guess probably the point I want to make with that, in a long-winded way, is that if people are ignorant in our community about what our own country is doing on our behalf, then why would we be surprised that anyone does anything here? Because we've been doing it. Our country was built on murder and massacres internally. So if we're complicit because we allow our own nation to do this on our behalf, why should we be surprised that it
When
could
it
happen
happens,
today?
yeah.
Yeah, and maybe it's not surprise so much as, well, again, what do you do? What's what's your response to what you see in the world? And everyone's going to be a little bit different in terms of how they pass that. And we're lucky in Brunswick, I suppose, that we do have a really passionate and committed, educated, informed, but also diverse. So there are a lot of
Absolutely.
perspectives.
We've got people in this building who
That's
are
right.
openly racist and want minorities like out. They say it.
Yeah.
And so, that has to come into the fore. But, like I said, you've got to choose, don't you? You've got to choose where you want to sort of kind of have your focus. And so I think really, if you think about, I'm a middle-aged mum, I'm a working person, those things that were happening, all I could see in society propelled me to do stuff. But there aren't many people who've got family commitments and work commitments, etc. I had to get to a point where I could find a way to get myself more free to spend the time blogging on the weekends or coming to do podcasts or, trying to get the time and space was one of the things. What motivates you to get the time
So
and
you're running
space
as
to
an
engage?
independent?
Yeah.
Okay, not like your
My mates, yeah. But we said that it wasn't going to be a secret.
No, no.
Yeah.
I know, but you could be running like as
Yeah.
independent fusions.
You could be, yeah. Anyway, actually, on that point, Mel, I was
Yeah.
just checking out your website before
Yeah.
the podcast, obviously. I'm very prepared when guests come on. But yeah, you're driving through the articles, yeah.
Yeah.
What was the website again? Sorry.
Yeah. So I'm actually using, I think it's Mel for Moreland at WordPress. And being Mel for Moreland is really just reflective of the fact that 12 years ago I set it up. And there's only me, I don't have funding, I don't have staff, I don't have anything except for what I can do. So I've kept everything going. So it's the same Facebook account, it's the same website, and it's a newish Instagram. And I do all that, by myself, basically.
Oh, yeah. So to Mel's point, Moreland, it's no longer called Moreland.
Very
Anyway,
big.
yeah, so,
That's right.
But yeah, so I guess when we were talking before about priorities, so what would be like your main pitch to potential voters in Brunswick? What do you care about?
Do I care about the most? I think information and misinformation. I'm sure we're going to come back to that at some point because we were having a bit of a discussion in the preamble. I feel one of the missing parts of the debate generally is that people actually don't know stuff about stuff. They don't know how far are we through renewables transition, or what percentage of the state government budget is spent on education, or what percentage of
I was thinking the same thing.
what percentage of the justice goes to the courts versus to outsourced prisons. So really kind of lifting the lid on a bunch of that I think is quite important. Doing all that research, because I'll be blogging every week, choose a topic, do a bit of research, have a bit of a think about it. One of the things that's really surprised me now is I have paid attention to politics and policy, probably since I was about 16. I did economics at high school. I was really interested in politics as a young person. So I've been paying attention now for, what's quite a long time. And I'm actually just really surprised at the privatisation of our public services. That is massive. And when...
Handing it off to Deloitte, KPMG.
Look,
Well,
consultants...
it's also dumbing down the intellectual prowess or what exists there as well. So that was done systematically at the same time. There was, privatising, it's part of neoliberal policies, but also dumbing down what was in there, the acumen.
But I think the result of that too is that, Victoria's gone from a state that had low numbers of people incarcerated to high numbers of people incarcerated. But along with that, the privatisation of prisons. There's more people that work in justice managing private prison contracts than there are necessarily dealing with some of the social policy and political cultural issues.
I don't think that was done in conjunction. That was done as part of that was the policy to privatise, and hence why we've got that. It's self-fulfilling prophecy.
Self-fulfilling prophecy. And whether it's prisons or transport or the titles office or land planning or Vic roads, a lot of that is Kennett. But even if you look a little bit further afield, there's still state-owned assets, for better or worse, in New South Wales and Queensland who've kind of resisted that. But then if you look federally, and that's another area of concern, I suppose, is coming from a local perspective, we've got this cascading effect where, fiscal vertical imbalance. The feds collect the income tax, keep what they want, pass some stuff to states. They keep what they want, pass some stuff to local governments. And at each level of government, they collect a little bit of tax on the way. But we've kind of got this system now where the way that the federal government is designing schemes actually means that the next level of government can't actually implement that level of
They don't have enough funding for it.
Well, if you think about aged care, and you did say you had a bit of a stake in aged care, but the way that funding model works is that now in 2026, local governments have completely exited aged care because the way that the federal government funding structure works, what states are trying to do, and then for local governments, they've kind of disappeared. It's the same story with childcare. Local governments can't. They're out of those markets now.
Okay.
With the creation, so the creation of these federal funding schemes has driven huge change throughout government, and associated with states. Another good example that's talked about a lot in Brunswick is also with housing. The Labor government has been now on, it's almost a multi-decade, because it's been going at least 10 years, to completely privatise public housing. So the net result of that is that governments now exist as, contract managers to manage KPIs for those provision of services. Neoliberal economics, call it what you want. But the net result of that is the value to our society of these institutions is, very dubious. How do we actually know that we're achieving any of those social outcomes? And how can we actually pull any of those levers?
The fact that we're actually asking these questions to say, how do we do the best to play the game that they're now wanting us to say is, the sport that we now need to call. No. We shouldn't be saying, how do we measure the way they want us to manage our resources and what we need as a society. No, they fucked it.
Yeah, no, that's not. I'm not saying that we need to do it because that's what I think.
Yeah, it's neoliberalism is that. It is taking public funds and allocating it to small corporate, high end, and that's what they've done, and they've done it exceptionally well. It has on the Labor Liberal, it's just economics how they've done it. So no, it's got to be scrapped. You can't be trying to massage it from the inside out.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that we've landed in this place where that's the case. I should also say that my first at uni, I did economics.
Right.
So in terms of what is the market, what is action rational, what is neoliberalism, etc. So I'm reasonably familiar with that language. But actually, where we are now, after 30 years of this, is what is actually the taxpayer-funded value. So actually, if you go back to economic thinking and go, well, actually, if you apply economic thinking to what's going on, it doesn't reflect good value for money. It doesn't reflect good value for money.
Would we get better value if we had a smaller government?
Depends what government was doing.
No, he's being facetious now.
No, that's true. The size of government's relevant.
Well, no, he's being facetious because of that of from our libertarians. That's all they say without any actually talking it through. But yeah, no.
Well, but actually, so on the point of privatisation, so my understanding, so most of what happened in Victoria was under Jeff Kennett, a Liberal leader, back in the early 2000s.
The 90s, Kennett came in.
Okay, yeah. And then, but an obvious question is, if it's so bad that all this privatisation happened, why doesn't Labor undo it? And I guess, Peter, your theory is about how, Liberal and Labor are essentially the same party and, they're just different facades, that would go a long way to explaining this. I mean...
Well, you've got to look at what the governments actually did. So, yes, Kennett privatised electricity assets. Yes, Kennett privatised transport. Labor came on later and has been privatising public housing. And that's happening literally today.
Yeah, they're tearing down some of the buildings,
Yeah, and then, and that's quite sweeping across Victoria, the public-private partnership type model. But those PPP type models, I think actually they even date all the way back to the Brumby and Bracks era of Labor governments as well. So there has been a pretty uninterrupted chain of these things happening. And I think what's happened at the same time, coincidentally, is rise of the internet, decline of traditional media, and there's just been a lot less scrutiny about some of these, what I think are pretty fundamental, foundational, structural changes in the way government delivers services, and also a real analysis of the value or not. If we were all better off and we paid less taxes and the services were a lot better and we had nothing to complain about, but I think there's plenty of things to complain about in the way that things are being delivered and with the way that a lot of these funding models continue to drive outcomes and then give us worse social outcomes, and that's what it comes down to.
Actually, Mel, on the point of misinformation, I guess, Labor is doing a job of, trying to inform people. I wonder, I had some of the Labor merch.
Oh, yeah.
I wonder, can you fill us in? Which...
So why are you guys doing, I'm going to ask this question seriously, why are you guys on a little bit of a Labor bash at the moment?
Because Labor's in government.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, Mel, sorry.
Well, no, because you're running for election, right? Both of you.
Oh,
So
I'm
I
not.
thought, oh, you're not?
No.
Okay. Well, the Fusion Party, I thought you were.
Yeah, Fusion is, yeah.
I thought everyone's the enemy,
Yeah.
not just Labor.
Oh, well, sorry, I just bring up Labor. I mean, they're the most relevant. They're in government, so...
Well, no, but you're running for, get Fusion Party, and
Yeah.
everyone's your enemy, not just Labor.
Anyway, I thought I would just
I'm
ask...
just asking. You seem to be on a Labor bash.
So viewers, maybe Peter has a point. Maybe I should bash someone else. But sorry, Mel, on the point of misinformation, I figured, all the stuff that Labor puts out about what a good job they're doing and everything, I guess, is it not misinformation? Is it true?
Look, you'd have to go through kind of point by point. I think my disappointment is a bit about, here what I see with Peter Khalil, my disappointment is that...
He's a federal member around Brunswick.
For
Does he
Wills.
still do stuff for ASIO or not?
Well, I guess we wouldn't know, would we? I mean, he's very
Not if he's
tight-lipped.
good at it.
Exactly. You tell us, is Peter Khalil still doing things for ASIO? Well, the CIA, wasn't it? Yeah, so.
Oh, really? I'm sorry, I don't know. I apologise, I don't know about that. But I think federal governments have the same thing. They want to do things that appeal to people electorally. So it's like, I'm going to take your money and I'm going to, kind of throw cash around. But in fact, that leads to, and to me, the number one thing I think at the moment Peter Khalil is associated with is the urgent care clinic in Coburg. Oh, this is great, got this urgent care clinic in Coburg. Oh, well, it's an urgent care clinic in Coburg. But also then when you scratch the surface, it's like, well, why is the federal government paying for an urgent care clinic in Coburg? And the answer then comes down to, because there's incredibly complicated cost-shifting arrangements that goes on in health. And so because this is electorally popular, the feds have now decided to, actually get more involved in that kind of direct delivery because it plays great in the electorate. So all the incentives are there for the feds to get more and more involved in things that actually then become more and more and more complicated.
Oh, sorry, your point is it's normally a state issue.
Well,
Education, health is general.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, we have a few foreign viewers. Yeah, sorry.
So obviously in the Australian Federation, I mean, much like the Canadian Federation and the American Federation, it's a group of states. So the powers of the states are everything except those specifically given to the Commonwealth government. So health and education are definitely within the remit of the states. But of course, the feds collect the tax revenue and then pass it down to the states. So in fact, a couple of my videos already have been about education, and my response to, for example, education funding is that actually what the Fed should do is stop getting involved. And it's a little bit the same with health. They should stop getting involved because the reason they want urgent care clinics is because the feds fund Medicare, and so the rebates for GPs, they put a lot of pressure on keeping the rebates low, and so the cost of those rebates is compressed, which makes it harder for GPs, and so the business of being a GP in a local area is tough, which means it's hard to be open at a time when someone might want to present with a minor issue, because the feds control that. But a state hospital emergency centre funded by the state government is going to be open, so I go there. So you see a classic example in health of the pressure between federal and state governments. And what do the federal do? Instead of the feds going, well, let's do something that changes Medicare, or let's directly fund the states to open their own clinics, they go, it plays better in the electorate, so we'll get involved in having an urgent care. So my MP can go around and go, I'm associated with the Coburg Urgent Care Clinic. So again, you've got poor system design, overlapping and complicated funding arrangements, duplicated layers of bureaucracy, and then what happens? They get more involved. And so we're actually making the problem worse, not better. So, and it's a complicated world we live in, and all the incentives for politicians that make it more and more and more complicated to suit them in their particular agenda. So a lot of the policy things that I've talked about, the feds are never going to give up education funding, but the feds should totally give up education funding. And everything else in this debate about education funding is window dressing, because fundamentally the feds take the taxes, they take what they need to run a federal Department of Education. They take what they need to make up their federal funding formulas. They cut a cheque to the 8 state and territory governments, which is what funds 65% of kids in school. Then the rest, they cut a couple of checks to the Catholic education officers, and then they cut a check to every single private school in the country. And that's how education funding works. And if anyone wants to know why it's so cooked, that's why it's so cooked.
Sorry, what's cooked about giving money to schools?
Because the feds take a cut, divide it how they want, then they pass some down to the states, and the states spend it how they want. And no one's clear about who spends on what and why
No leadership,
and what's fair.
basically. And, no leadership with strategy and tactical implementation, right, to execute it. And then obviously checkpoints to make sure you go. And as you were talking there, I was thinking, and part of the issue, and then when it comes with leadership, is then obviously having the right people in the right positions to do that. And part of that, then I was thinking, well, yesterday we mentioned it with Drew as well when we were talking about the Fusion Party. And I did say to him, part of your problem is that you have idiots as your candidates for the most part.
Why are you looking at me?
No, not you. And I said Owen and yourself are probably the only two that I've met that, have been worthwhile.
Thank you, Peter.
And I was listening to yourself. I'm like, you're one of probably the 3 people here that we've interviewed that, whether I agree fully with your policy, you get to your point of being able to formulate your ideas and get to that. And it makes total sense to me. Most of the people that I've come across in these forums and beyond are idiots. And they get to these positions, and even in the federal level, we see them as well. We don't have leadership. That's it. And then they get corrupted, and government does not serve the people anymore. They are a corporate appendage of the corporations.
I'm glad that, I'm a community person. Owen is a community person. You're talking to community people. So, of course, you're going to get people from different walks of life with different levels of experience. But I think it's good that actually, well, it's good and bad. Local governments are going to be paralysed for a few months because a large lot of local councillors will end up running for the state election.
I guess, yeah, they would. Yeah.
So councillors are going to find they can't meet quorum, or everybody's off, or the mayor's had to stand down. Like all kinds of chaos is going to happen in local government. But I suppose in that way, at least people have had to stand up in the local community. They've had to get themselves elected. They've had to turn up to their committee meetings every month, and they've had to sort of stay there. And that's possibly a better grounding for then putting yourself forward for state.
No, just because they've bought, the bathers, the goggles, the flippers, doesn't mean they're actually the right swimmers. No, tenure should not be why they should then move to the next tier of government.
That's right.
I'm making the point, if they don't have the right acumen, the right leadership capabilities to make those right decisions, and then also know when it's not, to then say, right, this isn't going right. Sure, you're upset, I made a promise, but this is the reasons why. And I'm telling you why it needs to change, and I'm articulating it, and I'm being accountable for it, because this is what a leader does. It isn't about telling you what you need to know. I'm also telling you why it's going to change.
Yeah, and why it's important, what the why is,
Yeah. So we don't have that. We haven't had it for a very long time.
I guess making unpopular decisions.
No, it's not about unpopular. Making the right decisions that are justifiable with the risk criteria. So these are the consequences, the likelihood, and you spell it out and you stand by it, and you're accountable for it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think a lot of the traditional mechanisms to bring people up and to have those community and leadership roles are a lot weaker in society. It used to be that Labor politicians, they came through the union movement. The union movement represents 10% of working Australians. So, down from historic highs of, 45% back in the 70s. So the kind of the political structure that encompasses a broad base of people that can bring them in and can nurture them and can kind of grow them. We've had plenty of state ministers that came up through the teachers' union, for example, and that's on the Labor sort of side of politics. I think that probably the same thing too with the Liberals, where you actually did have people in small businesses who worked locally, who then were involved in the Chamber of Commerce or Rotary or Lions Club, those kinds of community and civic engagement. So across the board, those kinds of foundational structures for civic engagement are pretty weak. They've been getting weaker all the time. And I sort of think actually there's a lot of different ways that people promote social inclusion or Neighbour Day or this or that kind of thing. But actually, and particularly local government, needs to do more to actually strengthen that level of not just social inclusion, but
creating
structures, community structures because I think that's where people come from. They become deacons of their church, and then they, move on to then represent a larger group. So I think that's weak.
I see.
And been getting weaker. And then I think that the consequence is that the people that you get coming through are weak and getting weaker.
I see. Yeah, so sorry, your point was so Labor people used to come from the unions. I guess they still do, but now that unions are less representative of Australia, you're saying maybe that's not the best source.
Well, the pool is shallower
Yeah.
by default.
Also, I guess so.
It's just less of them. Ben Chifley was a train driver who came up through the unions. He was a normal working person who said, you know what, my workplace could be better. I'm going to put myself forward and I'm going to organise people that I work with. And then from that, became the Prime Minister. And not to say that that's the only way to do it, but you've got a grounding. So that's what I talk about, talking about local politics, was people at least have got a grounding. They know what it has. They've got and it's the same as people who go on their school councils. There's a lot of people in the community I know who are quite involved in whatever their local school or, my kids were in scouting, whatever it happens to be.
Well, you yourself are pretty involved. I mean, you're in the Brunswick Communities for Nature, is that?
And that's right.
Yeah.
And that's my grassroots activity is
Pun intended.
Yeah. So we, again, we're an unstructured group. So we are a collective and we propagate and distribute Indigenous plants so that people can have them in their nature strips or gardens. So we support actually guerrilla gardening. So if you want to go and put some...
I've got some of Mel's plants out here.
Is that right? So if you want to put wild wildflowers in your nature strip or even down in a local park, that's the kind of thing we support. But we are deliberately unstructured. If maybe one day we'll incorporate and we'll have a president and a treasurer and a secretary and we'll meet every week and we'll have minutes and maybe we'll do that. But actually we've made a conscious choice that we actually want to be a group that's involved in direct action rather than that kind of other sort of stuff. But you know what? Maybe I'm going to go out and join Brunswick Lions Club because maybe Lions Club and that structure is actually what's needed in the community to try and...
Not the Freemasons, though.
Well, I don't know if there are Freemasons anymore. Are they all gone?
They have some. I've seen some of their buildings here, but I don't know if they're still involved with it.
Well,
Secretive.
the Freemasons' property portfolio, whatever they used
I don't know
to
if they
do.
like the girls either.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know a lot about it. Again, because it's a boys' thing, so I don't really know about it.
You should join.
I think do they still exist?
I think
Are they even left?
Yeah, so I've heard, my uncle, he might still be in it.
Yeah,
So
okay.
I think the idea, some of the viewers are probably rolling their eyes, like, how come these people don't know? But my understanding is you don't necessarily have to believe in Christian God, but you have to believe in some sort of higher being. So
What? Epstein pizza or something? What?
maybe. I don't know that. Anyway, Mel, back to the point about politics. Are you religious, by the way?
I don't believe in God, but I actually believe in organised religion. So
Okay.
For tax purposes?
going back to the same philosophy, which is religious institutions can be, a powerful force for, social inclusion and for helping people live a good life. You don't necessarily need the boogeyman in the sky or the multiple boogeyman in the sky to tell you that, but there are a lot of things that the religious sector have done in terms of social welfare in Australia that I think, they're certainly not without fault and flaw, but, there are definitely achievements there as well.
I don't know that I would have called him the boogeyman in the sky. Viewers, tell us, did Mel just lose your
Insult
vote?
all religious people, that's right. But like I
I
said,
call it adult Santa Claus in the sky.
yeah, that's right.
Anyway, by the way, viewers, you don't leave enough comments. I don't know what you're thinking. But hey, so Mel, something that's been happening, because maybe you've heard about it as well. So in Victoria, in Melbourne recently, so there's a graffiti a street artist with street art. So people might have heard of Pam the bird. So it's about, it's very prominent around Melbourne. So the other day on the Bondi Bridge, they had these pointless pylons. It looks like a suspension bridge, but then you see, there are no cables there. So he climbed up and painted.
Sure, some engineering reason.
I don't think so.
I don't think there is. No, I think that's, it's just actually an aesthetic thing to make a bridge more bridgier.
Well, it looks like a hellscape to me. So I think the bird looks good. And then, anyway, so Mel, what are your views? Should we keep the bird? There's a petition to keep the bird, even though it, counts as graffiti.
Yeah. I think we probably should keep the bird. When it happened, I was a little bit surprised about the police response. I feel like they're in a difficult position.
What did they do?
Oh, they block up the lanes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because he was not making a secret of it, so he went up there. And I think he was live streaming from up there or whatever. And of course, it's like, oh, he could fall to his death, and what do we do, and who's culpable, etc. So it was, there's a serious safety issue with
I
him
think they
there.
probably had to block a lane, didn't they? Lee?
Oh, they blocked heaps of like there were so many cops there. The guy, he knows what he's doing. You remember our guest Simon? He's been to Simon's place and climbed up that tower as well.
Really?
I mean, the guy clearly knows what he's doing.
From
You don't like him. Anyway.
And I thought it was pretty clear that they didn't send anyone else up in, because I figured that it was pretty clear that he knew how to get up there, but they didn't have 5 other people sitting around who knew how to get up there to retrieve him. So they had to have a standoff to wait till he came down. So it was actually went on for quite a long time. So whether that was the optimal way to resolve the situation and good use of resources is probably a bit moot.
But you see, so for instance, I guess the most famous street artist would be Banksy, and he would have broken laws to get started, and later people see like, there is value, that is art, that is poignant what Banksy is doing, and so should we ask for permission first? Then nothing would get done, and we'd have all these ugly hellscape bridges instead of. Yeah,
and there's quite a lot of criticism, I think, now that street art's become such a thing and so mainstream that in fact you've got a lot of corporatised murals, but that's not street art. Is commissioned public art, but it's not street art in the purest sense of the word.
Billboards.
Some of the public art program in Merri-bek, some lovely works along the train station and stuff like that. Lots of nature-inspired things and
they're not as subversive.
That's exactly right. But that's not what all street art is supposed to be. It's a deliberate act of not asking for permission and doing paste-ups and having messages and all the rest of it. So I don't think we want to lose that as part of our culture.
Well, Melbourne. Melbourne is known as being like the sort of most politically progressive part of Australia. And so, this notion that we shouldn't have art that's subversive, that's political, I think it's antithetical to
ask for permission to put that art out.
It's ridiculous. Did you see, by the way, so the viewers might remember our previous guest, Jeremy Lawrence from Streets Alive, Yarra. He doesn't like street art. There is a place for street art, and it is not in Yarra.
It's like how I used to operate at work. I used to plan in my calendar for spontaneity time.
But you would have dealt with you would have done the same quiz. So when we were running for council, I got a quiz about what would you describe as better streets? What do you think makes a street livable? Do you remember your answers, Mel?
No, I can't remember to the livable streets, but I'm definitely fall more on the guerrilla side of things. I think we were saying about the guerrilla gardening. The guerrilla gardening. I mean, we're lucky in Merri-bek that we have very progressive rules about nature strips. And there's a lot of free-for-all going out there, and the council's not unduly pernickety about it.
Doesn't have to be just grass.
Look, in some councils, you have to apply for a permit and you have to pay for that permit. And I know of other street gardens where their neighbours dobbed them in and the council's written them a compliance letter and they've had to change something in their nature strip.
You can't grow your plants.
We've had a few, one of the state issues actually, so I was writing Fusion's policy for, they're changing the Owners Corporations Act earlier this year, so that's a state government issue.
Yeah.
And we've had a few issues with my Owners Corporation. Peter's in the same Owners Corporation.
I'm not in it though.
Well, I mean,
I'm under it. I'm under the yoke.
You're not on the committee.
I'm under the yoke of it.
They don't like plants. They're threatening to cut my vines. They keep my windows dirty. That lawsuit's happening at the moment. And
I think also local government and owners corporation and people like that are at the absolute cold front of hysterical risk management. I mean, hysterical risk management.
I don't call it risk management. What they do is avoid consequences. It's quite different. If they did risk management and they articulated the decision, I'll say, right, whether I agree or not, that's your sense, right? I hear what you're articulating. Most people just avoid consequences.
Yeah, I think it's a bit sad. I mean, I've had people ask me when I go and do talks about Brunswick Committees for Nature but, what about you could get sued? And I actually say to people, listen, if you plant grass in the ground and you get sued for that, I will personally contribute to your fighting fund.
So it's just avoid the consequences. Let's not do anything. Rather than, show me your risk management, even a simple one, they will not do it because they'll show it yourself.
And I think it's very institutional driven and it's very low level. So when you're a school or a local council or an owners corporation, there's so much, everything's going to be locked down so tight just in case because something could happen. So we won't do anything because it's just too much. The paperwork's too much, it's too hard. If something went wrong, we can't handle it. And no one wants you to drop out of your window or fall off because you're pruning something. Nobody wants that, but equally.
Oh, sorry. There are a few people who would want
maybe
me
do.
and Peter to fall out this window.
Like Israel.
Well, actually, Mel, it's interesting. So on the point of owners corporations, I should mention as well, this fits in one of your ideas. So in my submission, I was suggesting, for instance, that the state government needs to help owners corporations to run themselves, so they could write open source software that these corporations can use. They could have more extensive rules. And so I had mentioned a similar idea in regards to maps. So I saw you were talking about Google Maps on your website.
Yeah,
and so
yeah.
it reminds me of an incident. American viewers, you probably remember this. It was like 2 years ago. There was some big winter storm in, I don't know, somewhere in America. But so these people, they were stuck on the highway, I think.
In December?
Oh, probably, yeah. So there must have been a crash on the highway or something thanks to the blizzard. Is that what you call it with this? Anyway, so they would wanted to get around the highway. And then, Google Maps recognized that, oh, well, you could go on this road, through the mountains. And it turned out this wasn't really a road. It was a mountain fire trail. And so, a Toyota Prius got stuck on this fire trail, for instance. And, all these people had to call, the emergency services to do all this towing. And you see in the interview, someone sort of got it. At the end, they said, this should really be, government should do something about these maps. So, you almost get... I mean, I see, the government's build the roads. Shouldn't the government also create the maps?
It's one of those cases where probably they used to. So you think about, example, post offices and addresses. So I know this is big. I'll loop back around to what I was supposed to be getting at. In the past, Australia Post was the guardian of an address. It wasn't an address unless Australia Post said it was an address.
Oh, yeah, makes sense.
And it's a similar true thing with maps. It wasn't actually a gazetted road until it was a gazetted road because the government had gazetted it. But some of those core regulatory, descriptive features and functions of governments and governments agencies, it's the soft edges of those where things have just sort of been left. So in Australia, a fire track through a state park probably is a gazetted fire track. It would appear on a Victorian government official state map. If it was a fire track in a Victorian state park, for example. So there's a bit of, because we're relying on those things a lot more, those sorts of definitions get a bit kind of sketchy. Even with Telstra, what is an address? Like Telstra, when they're doing the NBN installs, they had to rely on what an address was. But an apartment block has changed. Like, where is the actual address and who actually controls where that address is? But the world's got complicated.
So
institutions.
What are you guys talking about?
So
it's like a policy or something.
Well, so my point, sorry if it wasn't clear enough for viewers as well. My point, was not only should government create the maps, but for an application, like Google Maps, for instance, where you don't just want to see the map, you want directions. I'm saying that that is fundamentally part of society. It should be a government thing where they want to help their citizens get around easily, and it gives them very useful insight for public transport. And so for now, for instance, when they offer free public transport and nobody taps on or off, the government has no idea, where do people want to go? And,
Well, the post I did that Owen's talking about Google was, again, I was just doing a bit of a deep dive, how are we doing transport planning? How does it work? And the answer is there's actually a survey that the Victorian government does, and they do a sample and they get people to self-report on their behaviour. So they're using a pre-internet, pre-open data,
It would be so pointlessly vague, yeah. And you see as well, one of the failings, for instance, I saw...
I thought they just asked Transurban whether they want to charge loans, and then they say, right, we made them fill in the blanks.
Well, as well, if people don't like that, we can ask Oscar. There's no point in fighting. It's just
Can't fight city council.
If people chose to live in an area outside where there was public transport, that's on them. But anyway, so there's a local group, for instance, they were saying you should increase the frequency of the 508 bus route, which goes east-west nearby. And I guess, here would be an instance where
you should have evidence.
Well, how does the government know?
This is like the third time you've mentioned this bus route.
Oh, I mean...
in a year.
You've
got this...
We've taken it before. Anyway, but sorry, my point is, how the hell would the government know how many people want to catch the bus?
That's right.
They only have any data once the bus does get scheduled.
That's
how
right.
many people on the service. Yeah.
That's right. And you're reliant on... So there's the Victorian Transport Survey, which is this a small sample of people self-reporting. And then, of course, you've got Mikey data.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I have Mikey data somewhere.
No, but that's... How do you know all the people who wanted to catch the bus, but it was too inconvenient for them, and that sort of thing? If the government was running Google Maps, you would see, people in like Oven Street searching for, I want to go to, that place over there.
So you're saying the government should own what, the internet?
No, but
most of it.
Google is collecting it. So Google has the data which shows everybody who's on their Google Maps or their Google devices and where they are moving in real time for every millisecond of the day, right? And that's Google's proprietary own information.
Yeah.
Now, Victorian government gets it, but the Victorian government has to purchase a subset of that data. But also, it's not the exact data. They do some mathematical.
Anonymize it, I guess, yeah.
They do some mathematical analysis to scramble it so that if they do see one person walking on the street, they want to make sure that it isn't actually a person walking on the street. It's a theoretical person based on the maths that could have been walking down the street.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Yeah. So there's a big disconnect here between what global multinational corporates can collect about our movement data and use and commercialise, and its availability to the public realm and to public policy makers. So Google commercialise that public data, and so we should have more rights and pay less for that kind of data, which is to do with the social good, so to speak.
Oh, I haven't Albanese is now giving Palantir rights.
Well, actually, so on that point, viewers, you might be arcing up, like, I don't want government knowing that much about me. Like, okay, let Google, let Apple, let Palantir know that much about you. Like, that's what's happening. That's what the alternative is.
And I think that's where the privacy debate's just gone a bit. I'm old enough to remember the Australia card debate. Like, I can remember when it was like, we're going to have a national ID card.
No.
This is the Hawke Keating Labor government, and that was absolutely torn to shreds. And now the amount of information that non-resident global multinational corporations have about it, pales into insignificance, really, compared to, I think, even some of those.
Because we went to war to fight the strong emotion that we were evoked to fight against. That was fear, terror. And after that, our security and public's, identity, we were able to put aside.
I think there's some of that, but I also think that, again, the technology industry has galloped ahead so quickly, out of America's prosperity of the last 30 years.
They drove it, especially at that point. In 9/11 and post that.
Well, it's actually before. So a lot of these services date right back to
I don't say they doubt.
To the 90s and 2000s.
The inertia then was just like everyone would be like, it's for our own good. Based on what? The fear. Yeah.
So we haven't caught up in Australia. We, of course, we're a small country at the arse end of the world, so we're going to be last. And now we're so far out of state government issues, it's not funny. But I think that the interesting thing which is happening now is Europe. So Europe are now they're basically saying, we actually think as Europe, our national sovereignty is here at risk. They want to put Linux on desktops because they want to get away because they want to get away from Microsoft. They said our economy, our society cannot be so dependent on this ecosystem. So,
You're in favour of that, I'm guessing.
Oh, I am in favour of that, but like I said, I'll save that for the federal election.
Okay, sure. I guess, you would argue that state governments should also give up Microsoft Windows and should instead use Linux.
I think that I don't have a firm position about open source versus commercial because there's risks and benefits of both approaches. And so I think they need to run the ruler over all of that.
I would die on this hill, but okay.
Again, I don't have enough information. I think, again, pros and cons both ways. And we know already that there are products and services that the government has looked at and says, well, actually, that comes out of, that's Chinese, we don't want it, or that's Israeli, we don't want it, or that's what, that is actually happening.
Can't say the latter.
Mel, you're going to fall out the window soon.
But, who are the biggest technology providers? There's a substantial amount of software comes out of, Ukraine, comes out of Israel.
Yeah,
that's just a large industry.
Undeniable, yeah.
Yeah.
So, hey, moving on, I wonder, we often play a game with our guests.
Oh, yeah.
No, don't worry, it's not very hard.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, it will be hard today. But so we have a quote, so you're going to guess who said this quote, and also, but most importantly, how much we agree with it. So I'll give you a clue. It's, a person from an English-speaking country in the last, 200 years or so.
Well, that narrows it down.
Oh, it's, quote unquote.
Well, at least Owen doesn't have to appropriate someone's accent this time again.
Okay. No roomy quotes, no Confucius. Okay,
So,
good.
quote unquote, a civilization is not destroyed by wicked men, it is destroyed by weak men who cannot defend what is good. Okay, you're probably not going to get the exact person,
No, I don't
but I
think
guess,
so.
you know, like, are they conservative? Are they American? Are they liberal?
I'd say right. Only because I think it'll be like what your mate said yesterday, a bit of a revision, well, sort of reductive.
Oh, regressive, yeah.
Regressive.
Yeah. It does have a bit of a sort of Nuremberg trials kind of feel to it, and that is that, you know, for things to really go pear-shaped, it's not just that people are evil, it's that a lot of people turn a blind eye. So that's the vibe I'm getting off that.
Yeah,
quote.
World War II, that sort of vibe. Yeah, it's. I should look up what era it was exactly, but it was so G.K. Chesterton. He was an English writer, philosopher. So, for instance, he wrote the Father Brown novels. He converted to Catholicism and was quite pro-Catholic.
30s.
Yeah, around that time, I think. And so, as well, viewers, you might be aware of. Have you heard of the notion of Chesterton's fence?
No.
So the idea is you're coming along a road and you see like a fence is blocking the road, and so many people would think, oh, that's annoying, that's in the way, get rid of the fence. Who put that there? Versus his argument is, if you don't know why it's there, like, odds are it was probably put there for a good reason. And so until you actually understand why it was put there, you shouldn't be so brash and just rip it away.
Because it could be a live firing range on the other side of that fence.
Oh, it could be, yes.
Yeah. Or
And
a
so,
ball on the other side of that fence. Yeah.
I mean, you can see, you know, from this argument, you can see, like, obviously he was very conservative.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what's your view on that, by the way? I guess, like, do you want to rip down lots of stuff?
Yeah, I'm not sure what world we live in at the moment, where it's like we used to live in a world perhaps so you get to a fence and you turn around and drive the other way. Now we're like, it's a fence. I reckon I could get it open and drive through. Maybe it's because it's convenient to you. Maybe it's because I, you know, have my countercultural ideas of, you know, this is a fence representing the man and I've got to get around it. I'm not sure where we live in this world at the moment, but certainly just harking back to earlier comments, we're definitely in an era where, you know, the way we move in civic spaces, the way we take care of them, the way we do or don't have care and concern, I think it's definitely not on an upward swing. It's definitely on a downward
I was actually
swing.
thinking totally the opposite. And I was thinking, like, now, before we started, you know, giving your version of that now we would not move the fence. Now we have to ask for permission to even open up a stand to sell something. You know,
To sell lemonade, yeah.
I got a fine not long ago where I just sort of pulled over to the side of the road and straight up the road just to check something in my car, and the councillor actually took a photo in his car in the middle of the road and said I was in a and there was no
stopping.
cars, absolutely no
Yeah,
cars
yeah.
there. So we are basically adjudicated at every point here. Everyone is monitored for everything. So to sort of say, oh, something's here, I don't like it, I'm going to move it. No, it's sort of the anathema of who we perhaps maybe could have been in the past as making a discretionary decision to say, yeah, I don't like this, I'm going to change it. No, you get fined, you get prosecuted.
Well,
even our freedom of speech right now, you know, I can't criticise what I can see obvious on TV is occurring, massacres, because they've conflated it with, you're calling me anti-Semitic. No, you're fucking genocidal maniacs.
We were saying before about, you know, Pam the Bird. I guess, you know, like any street art, you know, they treat it like a big deal. And yeah, there's some sort of phone number around here. You know, call if you see graffiti. Like, don't call.
Yeah, don't call. I think contrary perspectives, two of them. One is being on the tram. God, it was hard being on the tram after pandemic because people have forgotten how to tram. It's like when you get on the tram and it's really full and then the person near the window gets up and leaves, you should move over to the window seat so that the person standing in the aisle blocking it can sit in this seat on the aisle seat, right? That's old-fashioned tram etiquette. Post-COVID, chaos, right? People are standing up and they're blocking the aisles and blah, blah. I think we're marginally a bit better. So that's one of those social space things, I suppose I mean, is that there's a bit of common good here. Mind you, I did go to Japan last year, and of course in Japan everyone does the right thing on public transport, and there's something absolutely blissful about public transport.
It's so clean in Japan as well, yeah.
People stand in a way that maximises everybody's utility. So that's sort of one side of the argument. I suppose the other side of the argument is one thing I've really got it in for at local government level is the code of conduct. So because of the we all know there's been plenty of council sack. They've got up to terrible shenanigans. They've all just been terrible to each other and all the rest of it. So there's this thing called a code of conduct. Here in Merribeck, there's been this range of people over the last couple of years who've got pinged for this code of conduct because they said something that someone found offensive.
Our mate Jay, Oscar, they've been in a bit of beef for a while, yeah.
And it's like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, if you're in public office and you say something that people are going to get offended, that is not an offence. This is not a dinner party.
Well, it's just your inability to regulate your emotions. That's it.
Oh, but sorry, Mel, your argument is like if a councillor says something that someone finds offensive or defamatory,
It's on them.
should
The inference is whoever gets offended, right? Now, unless someone says something that is obviously targeted and intentionally to offend that person, then that can be interrogated on that merit. But if someone says what you said has offended me, they'll say, here's a number to the local council and go and sort your childhood trauma out for the most part.
Yeah, we should separate defamatory because obviously, defamation and libel have, rules in the law. This is another regulatory set.
We're not talking about what's in the law. It's already there for harassment and all the other parts. The law covers that. What we're talking about is someone unable and unwilling more so to regulate their emotional state, right? And then they use whatever. Post-COVID, everyone's now an expert with, the discourse of emotions and everything else, right? And they self-regulate what is a clinical assessment, whether you're a narcissist, you're this, you're that. They all know the discourse. And what you've said has offended me. It's like, fine. Clinically, you're wrong. It is just your inability to regulate your emotions.
Actually, what about another situation? If we're talking code of conduct for people elected to politics, what about if you want to say, like, have an affair with your secretary?
No, we're talking about what's in the law is regulated, right? Code of conduct stuff. So whether, again, it's a power dynamic, sexual harassment, they're all covered. So even if it's consensual and you're working for me, it's covered there as far as, again, whether it's a power dynamic there thing. So there's things there that can be done.
I think something's gone wrong if a councillor at local government says, I think that's corrupt. And at the end of the whole debate, the consequence is that councillor loses their deputy. No, they lose their deputy mayorship and they have to spend a month not being on the council. That's what happens in these code of conduct things. Somebody complains against someone, somebody makes an arbitration based on a bunch of rules, so they've codified it. And then people are taken out of their elected responsibilities and kind of wrapped off the knuckles. That, I think, is unbelievably dangerous. I'm not that big.
It goes back to, so this is, sorry to interrupt, but it's proving my point from the start, that we have the wrong people in these positions. And what they then do is, as you said, they not just codify what they've done, but
they weaponise it.
Yeah, exactly. They weaponise and they codify the discourse that they then choose to make themselves validated in their role. But they should not be in those positions. They don't have the capacity, let alone the acumen for it.
Local government is not a dinner party. People do have legal responsibilities to govern. So there are some frameworks there about, Local Government Act and what they're supposed to do. But again, quite frankly, if your mate Oscar goes and tells somebody he's a silly old bugger, and I use that phrase deliberately because that's what Bob Hawke said on a walk, on a campaign walk. There was an old bloke who came up to him and gave him a billy. He goes, "Hey, you silly old bugger."
Is that insulting? That was a controversy.
Oh, it was massive.
Oh, okay.
Is that insulting? Yes. The old guy's giving him lip. He's giving him lip right back. But in 2026, you've offended that person. You could have a black mark against you. You could be taken off local council because you called someone a silly old bugger. That is an overreaction. That is, and you can weaponise that. And the consequences of stifling debate. Is the world a better place because if someone calls you a silly old bugger? No, the world's not a better place because of that. But the world is a worse place when you snuff out all those kinds of conversations because you think it's a big dinner party. It's not a big dinner party. Sometimes you've got to have a robust debate. So,
Well, my point is that they don't have the capacity for it. They are not, again, I don't know the individuals, but those that I've met don't have the capacity to be in that role.
Well, I think on that point, actually, in terms
pick him out, boys. Find someone better. Turn them all out.
I don't think people running, and I'm talking about people who are candidates. So I'm saying those that I've met,
Nah.
No.
On the point, actually, of having a robust debate and meeting
Yeah.
candidates who might be up to that, viewers, please remember to like and subscribe. And if you have any suggestions for people who could come on the show,
That's
and
right.
we can have these robust debates, yes, please reach out.
And I'm looking forward to, that's what I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to, you know, I run because the Brunswick Residents Network has a candidate forum. That is the highlight because you've got to stand there in a room
Oh,
with
what's that?
people.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
You stand there in a room with people in real life and someone goes, you know, here's a question and then you've got to answer.
Well, that's what I said to Drew. I said, you know, from the
Fusion president, yeah.
president. And I said I was talking to him about one of the
Oh, you've what about
pseudo
candidates?
candidates, and I said, you know, we were chatting about a particular topic, and you know, I kind of started unpacking it for him, and I'm like, you know, it's kind of ridiculous. And I said, you need to come on, right? Because if you can't come and defend this, and he got quite emotional and started like vilifying me personally. And I said to Andrew, like, you know, if your pseudo candidates can't handle just me unpacking their main policy, their only policy, I go, how do you vet these people?
I think we're not, look, it's hard because, you know, I've put out Instagram reels on my posts and stuff, and there's always a troll that goes, you know, you should check your facts, and oh, you've embarrassed yourself again, you blah, 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 blah. Look, you know, you do have to have a bit of a thick skin. It's abnormal to not be impacted by that kind of feedback. So it's not that surprising people's emotional regulation's a bit sort of
Where,
sketchy.
Mel, if
but, you know, I like a bit of Fight Club. I'm looking forward to it.
Mel, if people, you're on Instagram, I guess, if people want to see you embarrass yourself, where should they sign?
Mel for Marybeck. So hopefully if Google and the search engines do their job and you go Mel for Marybeck, you'll find me, even though it's Mel for Brunswick.
Oh, good shot.
But you'll find me, yeah. Because like I said, it's my council infrastructure going again.
And then I guess as well, importantly, so I guess we haven't spoken much about, like, you know, anyone who's like convinced now, it's Mel, pass me a glass of this Kool-Aid. So I guess, you know, like in the lead up, you're looking for volunteers, you're looking for donors.
Look, I'm not going to ask anybody for money. My campaign, my fee comes out of my own pocket. With any luck, if you get enough votes, they give it back to you. Didn't happen the first time I ran for local council, but it did happen the next two times. So that was pretty good. I think the extent of my campaigning will I might do some core flute. So if you're happy to have a core flute on the front yard, definitely get in contact. A core flute.
Oh, one of the big posters,
What are they
Yeah.
called?
Oh, the core flute is like the material it's made of.
right,
Yeah.
okay.
But, you know, one of the big posters saying, like, you know, but what do you reckon it's going to say? Vote Mel for...
So, it'll be community independent.
But you're going to have a slogan?
No, I won't have a slogan. It'll just
Formerly
be-
of Mel from Moreland.
Yeah, Mel from Mauler, Mel from Marybeck, I know. And that'll be it. I mean, again, I've got so much material about what I stand for and so much material about what I think is important. So, you know, a QR code and you can go and, you know, find everything basically. But I think really what I want to be able to do is I actually want to be able to speak in more things. I was sort of a bit disappointed because there's a Greens education forum where the speakers are all from the Greens party. It's like, you know what, we actually need an education forum where the speakers are not all from the same party. So that's why Brunswick Residents Network and actually Brunswick Voice, I think, are going to co-host that this year.
Oh, okay.
I think they're really important. So I think more of the groups in Brunswick, I'd love to be out and speaking to more of the groups in Brunswick and Princess Hill and Carlton North and Fitzroy North, you know, all across the sea. To sort of unpack some of those, because some of the things the political parties say, they need to be challenged.
It's from my experience, Greens only like to speak to themselves,
The faithful.
themselves in a green echo chamber.
That's right. That's right. And I think we all do suffer from that, but, you know,
Mostly the Greens, from my experience.
but
To be
we
fair-
have to get out there and we have to debate each other and we have to, you know, we have to get under some of the surface of some of these sorts of things. Because again, I think a lot of candidates as well, they're like, oh, this policy sounds great. I'm really into that. And who can do their own research? Who's got time? It's a lot. So there is a lot of trust involved in that. So I think we have to rip some of that out and say, look, we're actually going to have to talk about some of this. Is that really a good idea, what you're saying? Really? Is it?
Well, because we were discussing just before we started the episode,
Yeah.
I was saying, you know, one of the things about the Teals, you know, they focus very much on, I'm just going to ask my community for, you know, I'll listen to what you're saying. And the notion is, like, can you imagine, you know, you go to the bakery and, you know, Susie tells you, like, oh, you know, we need, you know, more funding for this thing. And oh, I heard this thing from Bob. Like, no, I was saying to Mel, like, we need people to pay, to focus, to do some research about some particular policy area, to come up with detailed suggestions.
Because you believe your electorate is stupid.
Well, it's not because they're stupid. They've got things to do.
Like,
They,
like collect the bread.
well, and so, so I mean, yesterday you were calling me a technocrat fascist.
Yeah, you are.
but
You are.
for
So
research.
then you're just proving my point that you don't.
I don't need to worry about you guys really me because you guys are grilling each
that,
other.
that you don't actually. The social aspect, you're saying, no, you know best.
No,
right?
no, it's not that I don't know best. I'm saying
You're saying politicians should stand for something.
I'm saying my perfect view of politics is that you should have a detailed pitch. So I go out, I research, I pitch what I think is a good idea. I'll say, viewers, here's my plan for housing. Do you think
How's
it's a
that
good
working
idea?
for you?
Well, sure, they don't like it.
It's not working for my either. It works a lot better if you go, hey, I was in government and I funded an urgent care clinic.
Well, so I guess, Mel, would you pitch yourself to the voters? I guess you said you didn't have
Yeah.
a pitch for your poster, but would your pitch be along the lines of like, I'm a community person, I'll listen to you, or would you have a plan ahead of time?
Oh, look, it's in my policy blog is the things that I think are important, the things that I think are priorities, the things that I think are kind of worth doing. So those are all there. I would say for the Teals and the Democrats, maybe who have a sort of similar thing, that's one side. That's more maybe a softer political kind of narrative. On the flip side, maybe you could say that a One Nation or a Palmer Party is more like, these are the things that are really important because I think these are the things that you think.
Oh, yeah, we still have that. Yeah, did you want to?
So I think they're both, you don't have to scratch too much with the Teals where actually, they've got a voting record. They're not all the same person. They're not a political party. But as a loose grouping, there probably are a lot of commonalities that you could find. And the same thing, some of these other sort of groups as well. But, both of them would say to themselves, they don't have the same policy apparatus, they don't have the same number of staffers, they don't have the same national conferences, they don't have the same. So they're both working off a low base in terms of what they can achieve. The fact that Fusion's got a policy, the fact that I've got a policy,
Makes us fascists.
No, you're a technocrat advocate.
Yeah.
By your own admission.
Well, I don't know. If that was going to be one of the insults, that would be like sort of the most accurate.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not saying it. I'm not saying it's accurate. I'm not saying.
You just did.
No, sorry. Viewers, you know what I mean. It's not 100% true. Maybe it's 70% true.
Yeah. But I suppose if I had to position
Your hand only goes that high up.
But if I suppose I had to position myself on the spectrum, it'd probably be that your ass must get tired from sitting on the fence. Really.
That people said that about you.
Well, for all centrists, I'm a centrist person. I think that government is important, but it shouldn't get too big. I think provision of social services is key, but it shouldn't be too wasteful. So yes, my ass gets sore sometimes from sitting on the fence. But I actually think that the polarisation of politics all over the place with all these populist movements, I'm staking a claim for the centre that actually you should state what your goals are, you should design policy that's good, you should measure whether it works, and then you should change it if it doesn't work. So that's probably the sort of, that's the centrist mandate really, is that, you want to have good government, you want to have sensible government, you want to have stable government, but you want to have one that serves people.
The only role government really has is good governance. Do that first and foremost, and the rest takes care of itself.
Yeah.
Looking after society. Yeah. Mel, finishing up, if anyone wants to, be more part of this, should they send you an email? What happens?
Yep. So Mel for Merribeck, Mel from Moreland, Mel for Brunswick. So I'm out there. So definitely get in contact. And like I said, I'd love a chance to speak to more people. If you're having a forum, and look, having a debate, that's what this is about. It's about the contest of ideas. So we've got to get those out there.
What if there's going to be another Mel in Brunswick? There might be another Mel running.
I know. I'll have to choose a colour now, don't I? That's my next job. I did wear fusion pink today.
Oh, yeah.
So thanks for having me.
Almost did too.
Okay. So,
But I'll have to choose something.
I guess there probably will not be another Mel.
Yeah.
Okay. If there is another Mel, come on the podcast. Okay. Thanks, viewers.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Mel. Okay.